I heard.
Okay, so when we solve this one, it's called an inequality because there's a less than 0, so that whenever you see an inequality, you have to understand there's not one answer. There's going to be a range of answers, right? When you can be less than something, you're not on something, you have a variety of answers, right? Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is factor this and figure out where does it actually equal on 0. So I'm going to GCF first. Does that make sense as a style? Would you recognize that? GCF and X out. I'm just going to say, where does it equal 0? Now I'm going to simple trinomial it. So some of you on your test forgot about this x at the start. You can't leave it out. It's still part of this, right? So x equals, and then there's 3 values. Okay, so I'm going to put those 3 numbers on that number line, obviously in an order as they would appear. So if we analyze x, we're saying, what is y doing when x is something? Well, I already know when x is -2, y is equal to 0. When x is 0, y is equal to 0. When x is 4, y is equal to 0. I already know that about this. But what's happening in between all those zones? So we're going to test an x number that's in this zone. I'm going to go -5. So when you test it, you can just plug it into this whole thing and go -5 cubed, minus da da da. I find it quicker just to go into these multipliers. So if x was -5, what would this multiply to? So this is -5 minus 4, -5 plus 2 is negative, and then those 3 negative numbers would get multiplied and be negative. Test. I'm going to go with a -1 in that zone. So the multipliers, so this bracket is negative. -1 minus 4 is negative. -1 plus 2 is positive. So 2 negatives and a positive would multiply to be positive. Something in between 0 and 4, so I'm going to go with a 2. Positive bracket, negative bracket, positive bracket. So that whole thing is negative. And the last test, I'm going to go over 4, so I'm just going to go, whatever, 10. Positive, positive, positive. 3 positives. Okay, now we have to actually answer the question. The question says, where am I less than 0? So being less than 0 is negative, right? So I could be in this zone, or I could be in that zone. Do you include these boundaries or not? No. So I'm going to draw open circles there because I'm saying I'm going up to it but not on it. Does that make sense when I say up to it, but not exactly to it? So how do you write this as a domain? Negative infinity up to -2, soft bracket. Yep. And then this one is 0 to 4. So that is your answer. Any x value inside that domain is a solution. Okay, what are the x values that make this 0? 3, yep, 1, and -2. Yep. 3, a 1, and a -2. All make that equal 0. Okay, you're going to now test. So I'm going to go, I don't know, -6. You are plugging it into 4 multipliers. So this also, people got wrong on the test because they didn't plug it into all 4 things. Okay, ready? -6 makes this bracket negative, 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 negative. You see that? -6 plus 2, right, is negative. 4 negatives make positive. Oh, this is going to be my favorite test, because what am I going to pick? 0. So 0 minus 3 is negative. 0 minus 1, negative. Positive, positive. So what does that come out to be? Positive. So sometimes people always think, well, doesn't it just alternate? There's one where it didn't alternate. It didn't go positive, negative, positive, negative. Okay, I'm going to test 2. 2 subtract 3 is negative. 2 subtract 1, positive. 2 plus 2, positive, positive. So that all is negative. Okay, the last zone, pick anything over 3, and I think all of them would be positive on that. Okay, here's the question. Where can I be greater than or equal to 0? Greater than, that works, or equal to, I can be on. Whoops, didn't make it there. What?
I hope you didn't play baseball. Softball.
Well, I was just trying to throw it along the wall so it slid there. I wasn't trying to make it in.
That's basketball. That's what they all say.
It's basketball. I can be in that zone, on, I can be on, I can be in this zone or on. So how do I write all that highlighted part as a domain? Anything from negative infinity to 1. Hard bracket. From 3 to infinity. Okay, graphing. So again, do you recognize that this is an inequality, which means there isn't just one answer to this, there is multiple answers. What I need you to do is think like this. I want y equals mx plus b. I know there's no equal sign, but I want y alone. Okay, so we're algebra. So here's what I'm going to do in the first equation. I'm going to write 3y is less than. 3y stays less than stays. this 2x is moving. Minus 15 is moving. Okay, let's give all the kids candy here. Divide by 3. Okay, I can graph that now. I know those skills. I got my y-intercept and I got my slope. So the y-intercept is 5. The slope tells me to move something, something. Did you pick down 2, right 3? Don't draw it yet because you have to think about before you draw it. What kind of line? Yeah, a dashed line through it. Because you can't be equal to that line. Which side would represent this? This is what again in just words? What is your sign here? Less. So which side would you go with the less then? Which angle's down? You're going to want to end up on that side of it eventually. Okay, same process here. So line 2. I'm going to keep the y's, so I'm going to go negative 2y less than or equal to. Negative 2y stayed. 3x, move it. Negative 8, move it. Everything divides, and there's something crazy that happens that we just have to remember. Sign flips. We remembered. The sign flipped. Okay, I'm going to go with a 3/2 as a positive, because 2 negatives, and a -4. Okay, so the reason again, sign flips if there's an algebra step of a multiply or divide by a negative number. Okay, so -4. I'm going to move up 3, right 2. I look to see if I should draw a dashed line or a solid line. Solid. And I'm going to be on the greater side of it. That's what it says now. So which side is angling in an upward? So that. So the solution would be anything over here. Anything that would be on that side of things is a solution, a coordinate that would work. Okay, graphing the absolute value. Okay, so there's your symbols, just in case I might write words absolute, or I might say just graph this. I might say just graph this. You need to understand what those symbols mean. Okay, there's 2 ideas when you are working with absolutes. What are the 2 ideas? If the number is 0, or if the number is positive, what do you know if you absolute that? Like if I absolute value 8, what is it? 8. So what happened? It stays. We'll say it stays. And if a number is negative, what happens to a negative number? It changes to positive. So the absolute value of -7 is 7. All right, so where is this going to stay? right there. Okay, some of you on your test didn't overlap those regions and you only got 50% on that question because you didn't overlap it to show me that, yeah, it's not moving, it's staying. Okay, this part of the graph is going to change to be positive. So can you visualize what that would look like? So there's my final graph. And the very last question before I release you onto your own studying. Reciprocal. This is the symbol you would see for this is a reciprocal. You should know that you've heard the word reciprocating before when you're flipping fractions, right? You've heard that word before. Okay, we had 3 big ideas. What if the height was 0? We reciprocate 0. What happens to the reciprocal of 0? 1 over 0, which is undefined. How would you ever graph undefined? Asymptote. Look at these fancy words, remembering them. Okay, so where would that occur on this graph? Where do you see a height of 0? At 3. So I'm going to now draw an asymptote and an asymptote. The next was, where do you see heights of 1 or negative 1? Because what happens when I, for instance, reciprocate 1? What does it do? 1 over 1 is still 1. So those points in grade 12 on the provincial exam, you would see the word invariant because it didn't change. So I'm going to have 2 coordinates that don't move. Right there and there. Those points will not move. Then the third concept is just filling in the patterns. So lower points become the higher points. Higher points become the lower points. Okay, let's talk about where my pen is right here. In this zone, right here. What's going on with these heights? Should we call them small negative numbers? These would be small negative numbers. So what would they turn into? Big negative. So how do I show big negative? You shoot down. Same with where my pen is here. If I flip-flop that, this is small negative numbers. So if I reciprocate, it would turn into a big negative number. This is the biggest negative number, or the lowest, so it should now turn into the highest. So if the height of this is -4, the new height of it is going to move to -1/4.